why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is John McCormick. I'm on the executive committee of the Lafayette Chamber, and on behalf of the Lafayette Chamber, I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting. Normally, coffee with the mayor, but we've been fortunate that we've had a couple of guest stars kind of sprinkling in this year. We had the Lafayette superintendent join us for a meeting this year, and we're very fortunate today to have Candace Andersen, supervisor, our county supervisor, District 2, join us to give us a little broader perspective, which is very, very exciting. You know, we're so fortunate to have such good communication with our city officials, but it's the same as the county officials. And it's worth noting that Candace is just a diligent attendee of our Coffee with the Mayors. And so it's always really nice to get her. She'll also kind of chime in when we need that perspective. And very, very welcome. And her insight is always very, very helpful. So why don't we go ahead and get started? We're going to follow the same format that we do with the Coffee with the Mayors. So we'll let Supervisor Andersen give us an update on what's going on with the county, some of the highlights that we may or may not know of, just because we're focused a lot on our city, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. As usual, I would just suggest we have the amazing Holly Sunny running the show and the chat. If you want to keep that open, she tends to pepper that with links and supplementary information to everything that's being talked about, so which is quite helpful. So, Supervisor Andersen, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Sean, and it is a pleasure to be with you. I do enjoy attending your Lafayette Coffees with the Mayor because I learn a lot about what's going on in your community, and you do a lot in Lafayette. You have an amazing city council, and you have great community support, and you're very, very fortunate to live in Lafayette. It's a fabulous place. I'm always happy to invite people, if you're ever curious about what we're doing on the Board of Supervisors, come to one of our meetings. We meet most Tuesdays, and I say most because we've had the last Tuesdays off in August, although we are having a special meeting this morning to ratify a contract with our firefighters. And some of you may know that the Board of Supervisors also sits as the Board of Directors for Contra Costa Fire Protection District, which provides fire services for Lafayette. So we are having a very short meeting this morning, right after this meeting, to ratify a contract to ensure that we keep our firefighters well paid and getting the compensation they need, so they want to remain with our district. And speaking of our fire district, at some point we will be replacing Fire Station 15, which is the building that is attached to my office. Really, my office is a little subpart of the fire station, but that fire station is not that tall. And as we get larger apparatus, as you get larger buildings in the city of Lafayette, and those taller ladder trucks don't really fit in that station. And so, in a very casual way, the fire district is looking around at other alternatives, other possibilities of where they might build a Fire Station 15 to replace the one that is there right now in Mount Diablo Boulevard. No time frame for that. At this point, we're really focused on fire stations throughout in other parts of the community where there isn't even a fire station at this point, or one that's so degraded that it's really not serving any function. So sort of keep that in the back of your mind that may be something coming up. But as I mentioned, we do meet most Tuesdays. Next Tuesday, not, because it's the day after Labor Day. But after that, you can watch us on Contra Costa TV on your computer, or if you have cable TV, we're often included in your exciting array of stations. So one of the fun things that I get to do is I get to serve with some of your council members, because there are many services that we provide in our communities that really involve both the city and the county. And so, for example, County Connection, I actually get to serve with your former mayor, Don Tatson, and your council is gracious enough to allow Don to stay on County Connection's board as we sort of reinvent and respond to changes in the economy, changes in workforce, as to how we can best provide transportation services through County Connection. We've made some great strides in how we provide it to some of our disabled population, those who need a ride, with a pilot program, actually with LabTub, with the Livermore Amador Valley Transportation, and where we are doing a one-seat ride, where essentially it's almost like an Uber-like experience where you schedule it and you're able to get that ride when you need to go to someplace. Recycle Smart, I get to serve with both Gina Dawson and Teresa Geringer, and we get to talk about exciting, we always joke, we talk trash. That's where we get to talk about your regular service pickup or lack thereof. We've had a few hiccups over the last few years, and we are moving forward into a process to do a request for proposals, to look at a new provider potentially, allowing, of course, Republic and Mount Diablo that provides our recycling services to bid, but to look forward to what the next 10 years are going to look like. And that process is just in the very early stages, but in the next couple of years, you may be hearing more from Gina and Teresa about that probability that's coming forward. And then I also serve with Teresa on our Southwestern Area Transportation Committee, and that's also known as SWAT. And I serve with, on that, we have both San Ramon, Danville, Moraga, and Orinda representatives, as well, as we're sort of a subset of the Transportation Authority, talking about improvements that need to be taking place in our community. This is where we get to sort of drill down a little bit further on those areas. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of services that we partner with, and then some services that the county provides that our cities don't. And again, not because they could not, but simply because they do a really great job in providing your housing, your planning, your land use, your parks, recreation, transportation services, police services. But we continue to have some of the safety net services. And despite the pandemic itself being relatively over, although I will say we are seeing a real uptick in our sewage, which is where we monitor COVID. We don't find the test at our sites reliable enough because most people are home testing sewage. There's an uptick. So I'm just going to put a little side note. Please be cautious. If you're not feeling well, test. If you need free test kits, we still have some in my office that we do make available to the public. So by all means, let us know, because we are happy to help with that. But we do see a lot of needs, and homelessness continues to be a very significant issue. You know, each year we do a point in time count in late January. This year we found that there were about 2,372 people who were experiencing homelessness on that night. Of that, about 1,653 of those were actually unsheltered. I would say that there are less than 5 people were counted in Lafayette, so you don't show up on our chart as far as having homeless people, but we know that there are people in all of our communities that are either unhoused or that might be couch surfing or might have other needs. Right now, when we look at the demographics, over 63% of our homeless population is male. And 67% of those are chronically homeless, meaning this isn't the first time that they have been homeless. Fortunately, children make up less than 5% of the homeless population. And of course, they're living with families, with their own families. Obviously, a child on the street would immediately be taken care of and placed in our foster system. But of those families with children, it's just about 5%. And they do tend to get housed extremely, extremely quickly with very extensive wraparound services to try to stabilize their situation. Interestingly, when you survey the homeless population, 83% reported that at least one member of their household had a disabling condition. 51% said it's a chronic health condition. Another 51% similarly with an overlap population identifies substance use disorder. And interestingly, we are using now the term, rather than substance abuse, they recommend we say substance use disorder. And I don't know who decided that was sort of the politically correct way to identify that, certainly because many people use a variety of substances, but that is currently the new term that I just learned fairly recently. Many of those who identified as being homeless really have roots in our community. 77% had been residents of Contra Costa for 10 or more years, 11% 5 to 9 years, and 9% 1 to 4 years. So you see, it's not people coming into the county because we have great services, but it really is people who have deep roots. And we found that in some of our more affluent communities, that oftentimes the homeless individuals who find themselves there are people who grew up in our towns, in our cities, and this is where they feel comfortable, they feel safe. And for whether it's a mental health crisis, a substance use disorder, or other, they tend to come back here. So the county's working really hard on a wide variety of approaches to working with homelessness. And we combine our homeless services in our health department for understandable reasons. So we have our H3 program, which really is combining those services. It gives us an ability to tap into oftentimes their medical records as well when they need supportive services. We have increased capacity since 2020 with additional 560 beds. Not enough, but it's certainly a start. We are investing with Measure X $12 million each year annually to establish a housing trust fund. And the beauty of a housing trust fund is it can be used for a variety of things. It's used certainly to help support affordable housing in a small segment, but it's also used perhaps to help someone pay the first and last month's rent, or to help subsidize if their rent goes up by several $100s, allow someone to remain housed where they are, but help subsidize their rent to an affordable rate for them. And we are also working with counties and cities together, something called At Home. And it's a new sort of approach by the League of California Cities with our California State Association of Counties. And it's focusing on things like accountability, transparency, housing outreach, mitigation, economic opportunities, all those things to stabilize someone and help them remain housed. And you may be aware that during the pandemic, we did purchase in Pittsburgh a Motel 8, and it's called Delta Landing. It's supportive housing. It's not, you really can't with homelessness just find someone, in most cases, a home, say, here's the key, see you later, hope you're doing okay. But you need those supportive services. And right now we're looking at additional motel sites of leasing rooms in motels. We find that it helps cities maintain their transit occupancy tax, which is very important for their cities to have that revenue. But you also then can provide supportive services. And as you might imagine, it's hard to build homeless housing in any community. There are a lot of concerns, many justified, but also just a fear of, if you built a large homeless shelter in my neighborhood, what would that do? How would it impact our businesses? How would we have sufficient services for those people? And so oftentimes we're finding, with vacancy rates higher in some of our local motels throughout the county, it works to go ahead and lease those facilities as well. So switching gears a little bit on you, we have a new veteran service officer, and we have been without one for just about a year, and we're excited to have Joshua Zebley joining us. And a lot of people don't really realize that the county has veteran services, and some of the things we're providing through this is anyone who has served should check in, because there's so many things that may be available to an individual, even if you weren't a long-term veteran. And I remember having this discussion with my father a few years ago. He served during the Korean War, as most people did with the draft. He had just graduated from UCLA in law school, so he served in the JAG. And for whatever reason, he did not consider himself a veteran. And so it's helpful to remind people that there are everything available from, for example, helping you access compensation for service-related disabilities, some pensions for wartime veterans and non-service connected disabilities, education benefits, potential medical treatment, home loan benefits, government life insurance, burial benefits, which many people don't think about, and for your spouse as well. Pensions for non-service related deaths, proceeds of government life insurance, medical benefits. So there's some great information about that, as well as information about some veteran programs like Agent Orange programs, alcoholism and drug treatment programs, State of California veterans benefits, hospital care, outpatient treatment, dental care, small business administration programs, and employment and job search resources. And so we always want to remind our veterans that these services are available regardless of your economic level. You may want to check in and make sure that you are enrolled, and your family may want to access those benefits for you as well on your behalf if that time comes. Now, we also, I'm going to switch gears on you here. We've got a lot of great programs in the Justice Department. And so Justice Department in the counties where we're providing our district attorney's office, public defender's office, sheriff's officer, which also includes the coroner, the jails. But one that we don't think about is animal services. We consider that because they do have some police powers as well. We've continued to see a very large surge of surrendered animals. And 2 weeks ago, we had a huge push to encourage people to either foster or adopt some of these shelter animals, or ultimately, you reach a point where some may be euthanized. And we work really closely with rescue groups and really closely with other organizations to not have to euthanize a healthy pet. Obviously, there's some pets that for a variety of reasons would have to be put down. But it's something that was very, very successful. We got many, many animals adopted, but we always want to encourage people to do that. And as you may be aware, each city in Contra Costa, with the exception of Antioch, because they have their own animal services, pay $9.11 per capita for the services of our animal services department. And so that's something where there are services that we contract with. We work with a city manager and staff to ensure that we're providing the services that really need to be provided for your community. And the one that troubled me several years ago is when they stopped coming onto properties to pick up deceased large animals like a deer in your backyard, and would say things, well, if you could just drag it out to the curb, then we could pick it up for you. Or if you would just dismember it, would put it in garbage bags, then someone could come and get it. So we now do have that service. That was a big one for me. And so I'm glad to say we've got that going. Property taxes. I know you are certainly as a city dependent on that. Last year, we saw them up 5.94%. Lafayette was toward the top range, right up around that almost 6% range. Unincorporated Lafayette and unincorporated Walnut Creek also saw a significant increase as well. Unemployment continues to be relatively low in the county. We're down about 3.7%, and Lafayette is around that.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
And I'm so sorry. Thank you, Siri, for deciding that you wanted to join in. Don't you love Siri? Not sure why she decided to join in. I thought that was one of you at first shouting. I didn't quite get that till I recognized Siri's voice. So 3.7% was right around where we are with our unemployment. Measure X tax dollars are continuing to be put to good use. We're finding we have some additional revenue, and in mid-September, the Board of Supervisors is going to be allocating that money. I really appreciate your former council member, Steve Bliss, who is one of our Measure X CAB members. He provides great insight, particularly with his work in the community, in his professional career, as we look at housing issues, homeless issues, those things. We are finally almost at the point where we're going to have a Measure X oversight body. And this is something that was part of the measure. It's something I've been pushing for very, very hard. It frustrated me from the beginning that this wasn't really kind of the first thing we did when we passed the sales tax. This is something that will ensure that the money is being spent where we say it's going, and that we're going to have a little bit higher level of accountability. For me, it's been really important to emphasize that while this is not a return to source tax measure, we're not going to go dollar for dollar back to the same community where the revenue was generated, that we do see some parity across the county, and we all have very different needs throughout the community. And I want to make sure that our end of the county, which is often perceived as the affluent area without any needs, gets a fair share. And so that's something that I continue to work for. With our Measure X dollars, our A3 program, not to be confused with our H3, which is our homeless services, but our A3 are anywhere, any anyone, anywhere, anytime program is currently open, daily 8 a.m. till 12:30 a.m. We continue to move and expand our services. We anticipate as we hire more to have it open 24 hours a day. And this, of course, is an alternative to police in a mental health crisis. But I will say it's been hard to staff it up. There is a lack of people with the behavioral health training and background to fully staff it. And we continue to offer some great incentives, but it is providing some great alternatives. We are still looking at building and creating more of what we call a sobering center as an alternative to showing up at psych emergency if someone is having a mental health crisis. Really, you want to, not everyone has a mental health crisis where they need psych emergency. And instead, it might be more of a place where they can recover if they've had too much to drink, if they've had any substance use disorder issues, or if it's also been just a little bit more mild. And then also the peer respite. And we do have some great organizations that really are doing some good things to provide some of that additional support that someone might need when they're facing a mental health crisis. I will note that San Ramon Valley Fire has been doing a pilot program where they send firefighters, trained firefighters, as the first responder to a mental health crisis. They're doing this in conjunction with San Ramon Police Department. And it's a really interesting model, and that we're hoping to see will show we should be doing the same with Confire. Louis Richard, our fire chief, is watching it very closely, because sometimes police may be a little bit more intimidating to someone than a firefighter. And you talk to police and fire, and sometimes fire likes to say, yeah, everyone likes us much better than police. Not sure that is really the case, but nevertheless, it's a friendly face that may be able to help somebody moving forward. We are also, as we deal with our people who cycle through our jails because of a mental health issue, we are moving forward with the expansion of our West County jail that's out in Richmond, adding 288 high security beds. 96 of these are going to be mental health beds. Now, I will say this is not new net beds. We will be decommissioning 288 beds in both our Martinez and West County jail, provide a little bit, deal with overcrowding that sometimes occurs. But there we're going to be able to provide a greater level of mental health treatment. It's going to include a new mental health facility, medical facility, dental facility, and optometry, new family visitation space, which we don't currently have, additional classrooms for vocational training. And because right now, interestingly, if you're a high security prisoner, and it may be somebody who has gang affiliations and can't mix in with the general population, and you're ending up at Martinez Detention Facility, which is our higher security facility, you don't have access to the same vocational opportunities as someone might who's out at our West County Detention Facility. And you might say, well, why are you having to build stronger, bigger jails? And the reality is, back in 2011, when the state did one of their things they call a realignment, they put some of the lower level offenders who in the past would have gone to state prison under the care and custody of the county. I'm hoping that we would be able to better integrate them back in at the end of their sentence into their own communities. So we've needed to, instead of having short-term jails, have jails that have programming that lasts just a little bit longer. Similarly, talking about juvenile detention, the state did a realignment, and so no longer will you have a state juvenile detention hall facility. Those have come back to us as well. And we ended up closing our Byron Boys Ranch, which is also known as the Orrin Allen Youth Facility. It was for lowest level male offenders. Young women weren't out there. It was a locked facility, but out in Byron, a little bit more rural area. And instead, those same youth who qualified for that are going back into more community-based programs where we are coming in. It's called the Briones youth facilities that we're calling it, and we are really working to get families reunited, provide intensive services in their homes, and have sort of a step-down approach with more services also offered in our juvenile detention facility in Martinez. And with this whole Briones youth facility concept, we're going to have more classes, vocational classes, more stabilization so that we can help these youth have a more successful life. And we continue to really focus on our most vulnerable youth. And we just had a great presentation a couple of weeks ago about those youth who are in foster care or end up in our detention facilities. And we've created something called our comprehensive prevention plan. And as we went through this process, which was really something that the state was requiring us to do, but a good thing, a needs assessment was created throughout the county to find where we had youth at greatest risk. And interestingly, right now it's in Antioch. And when you look at what Antioch is facing compared to the rest of the county, Contra Costa County as a whole sits at about 92.5 percentile for healthy community conditions. Antioch is about 10 to 15% right now, just this huge disparity. It's, their population has grown with a lot of the Bay Area, but it also has more core to the Bay, Alameda County, Richmond, Oakland. A lot of those residents got displaced through gentrification. A lot of that has pushed out to Antioch, and East County has not been historically where we've offered a lot of services. More of our social services were being offered in the Richmond San Pablo area. And so we're now really focusing on that. And so they're really focusing on concrete support to families in crisis, more accessibility to resources and services, really focusing on family preservation, parenting skills, trauma-informed services, and then more public awareness to fuel these resources. And so we're really excited to see how this plan is rolled out and looking forward to that. And we also are excited about more programs coming forward. We are drafting a safe gun storage ordinance, very similar to what the La Miranda cities have done. I'm getting a little bit of pushback from a few gun owners who like to have guns located throughout their home in case there's a home invasion. But this one would still allow, of course, people to have their guns, but just in a locked container. With biometric use, you're able to pretty quickly access a weapon should someone need to, and hopefully we're not having people in our community feeling the need to access those weapons. For me, one of the things that concerned me the most is we saw a rash of burglaries, particularly in the Alamo, Walnut Creek, North Danville areas this last winter. So often guns were being stolen, which then, of course, were being used in the commission of crimes. And statistically, as we see suicides and people taking their lives, for men, the number one use of a weapon is a gun as they take their own lives. We hope that a locked weapon might give someone a little bit a pause for reflection, accessing service. And of course, we want to keep weapons out of the hands of children or those who are mentally unstable who should not be having access to those. So it's a very small part to try to address gun violence while at the same time respecting everyone's Second Amendment rights as well. Safety, evacuation, as I've watched the tragedy in my home state in Hawaii unfold in Maui, it's just so sad to see the loss of life, homes, historic buildings, and it renews the efforts that we have been doing and with the La Miranda CERT, with MOFD and CONFIRE of really being prepared for evacuations, having your ready and go kit ready to go, or a 72-hour kit ready to go. And particularly when we know with weather reports, when we're getting to high fire danger, I'm at the point where I have for the last year encouraged people who feel that they're vulnerable because they live in an area with trees or exposed power lines, don't even wait to be evacuated. If you're concerned, by all means, leave earlier, go to a place that you feel safer. We are also, though, concerned about the number of shutoffs by PG&E, and there's a balance that we're hoping will be met. Again, we don't want to see a situation where in high winds we have our power lines falling, sparking a fire, but at the same time, I know how it's impacting our businesses when power is unannounced being shut off. And I know it's impacting Lafayette, just as it's impacting Alamo, Danville, San Ramon. We are in our Alamo Municipal Advisory Council is having a PG&E representative coming in September to sort of talk about the balance that they're trying to reach with this. And again, I know in Lafayette, you worked so hard. I look at Gina about trees and ensuring that we just didn't do a mass chopping down of trees. But again, it's finding that balance. I will always say that, human safety has to come first when it comes to shutting off power, which seems the responsible thing to do, but we want to make sure that there is that appropriate balance, and when the emergency is over, that we get that back on, and hopefully that we give advanced notice to businesses so they can perhaps get a generator ready to go if they know that's going to happen. And I see your pencil is up, John. Did you want to?
I was just going to suggest, I think these are just the scope that the county supports us is just phenomenal, and it's amazing. But we've had a couple of questions come in on the chat, and I want to make sure we have a chance to get those as well before we do that. And then, but no, it's just phenomenal. I would agree, certainly from the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, the power outage situation is certainly one that we look forward to a better balance there of safety versus losing power. But I do want to go to a couple of things that you'd asked, and then we can take a few questions from the folks that are attending. I know Matt Pease did brought up something when you were talking about the homeless situation, which is just amazing. And you are right. Lafayette is fortunate that we don't have quite the intensity that some of the other cities do. But just as a general kind of stepping back and looking overall, what do you think is our shortage on beds right now? I mean, because we talked about obviously some new things that the county is doing. So obviously there's still a gap, but is there a target that the county is looking at?
And I don't have a number of a target. Obviously, I think, easily we could use as many beds to make up that number of that 2,700 people in a point in time count. But of course, it's not just shelter beds. We really need permanent housing for so many of these individuals. And so what you see our housing director doing is looking for every opportunity to expand, every grant that we can expand, and throughout the entire county. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to see. How do we make that work? And a good example in is just more affordable housing that will help those individuals who end up being homeless. And one of the largest percentage is our senior population. We find that they're homeless. And so we've been doing a big focus on creating that housing. So bottom line, Matt, I don't have an exact number other than we're not there yet. And we're going to continue to just push and push for more, both shelter beds, but more longer term supportive housing that these individuals need. And so we're doing, for example, in San Pablo, converting an office building that is no longer in use into housing. And while that's a little more expensive, as opposed to trying to get the entitlements, find a site, it's a little bit more affordable to convert an office building than starting anew from the beginning.
Right. That's thank you. No, it's certainly a challenge everywhere in that one. One other and a couple of comments that come in, and so I'll just group them together. But expressing, and this of course is where the city and the county. There's obviously one of the main areas I think that citizens interact with the county a lot is with building permits and everything construction. Right. That's kind of where we see the county a lot. And there's a couple of comments in the chat, and I don't want to dwell too much onto the time, but expressing frustration at the process for building permits and the speed, and the frustration is causing both the citizens as well as contractors and all that. Maybe if you can speak a little bit to that, if you're aware of the problem or if what's being done.
There's a problem?
What's being done.
I think what we saw, and it's much, much, much slower than is really tolerable for me. And this is something I discussed with John Kopchik. I think the reality, COVID, we saw a lot of shifts of positions. A lot of our building inspectors, planners left to go into private industry. We are we have hired many more people. We are continuing to try to streamline the process. I get frustrated because you're not just signing up, getting signed off, excuse me, by our planning department, but by our public works department. And you've got to have fire signing off and other potential environmental help. And so for me, from day one, I have been really encouraging people to work with one planner, which should be the norm, and have that planner at the first meeting make sure you know exactly what you need, who's going to be providing it. And it's been challenging because we did over the pandemic convert to more of an electronic system where we weren't having people just walking into the counter saying, I need this today, I need this today. It has slowed things down in many instances. Sometimes it's all the county's fault. Sometimes it might be an architect's or an engineer's fault who drew a line just a little off, and therefore the plans don't necessarily meet exactly what the planner signed off on. But by all means, if there is an issue, call my office. I find our county staff being extremely responsive to it, but it is frustrating. It is something I continue to push our planning department to turn things around faster. I mean, it's for many people, it's a construction loan. It's expensive to be carrying that loan without having their business open or having to rent a home while they're trying to build one. I'm very cognizant of it, as is John Kopchik, and I'm hoping that we continue to see improvements as we've been able to hire more people. But we did lose a lot of very key people through retirement or going to other positions during the pandemic. And so that's my best response. And I apologize for anyone who's seen a significant delay, but call Lori. She is Lori Byers on my staff. Call her office. She is the liaison, and she would be very happy to make inquiries on your behalf to figure out what's going on. Why has this happened?
Great, thank you. That is a good. I agree. It's a good short-term solution. I do agree. We've had very good luck when we reach out to the office directly. So you hate to have that be the process, but I think that probably is the best we can do it at the moment. I want to go to a couple of people who raised their hands. So Kelly and Sarah, I see you've raised your hand. Do you have a question for the supervisor?
Yes, good morning, Supervisor. Actually, it's Carrie.
Carrie, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. I have a sister, Kelly, though.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank Supervisor Andersen for coming this morning. In the 25 years that I've lived in Lafayette, in the unincorporated part, I have only had to reach out to her office one time about a matter. And not only were they unbelievably responsive, but she put me in touch with her deputy, Gail. And so I just want to commend you for that, because I know that you get many complaints, positives, negatives, and a lot of communication is required in your job. And I think your office does an outstanding job. To the matter that I want to speak of this morning is I wanted to ask about BART. And while you haven't mentioned that, I'm hearing a lot on NPR that Scott Wiener is thinking about putting a proposal in front of us to put a tax on BART to offset the diminishing returns of the operational costs. And I wanted to know if you could speak to that, because I personally have stopped taking BART because I've seen so many weapons and I felt personally threatened. My son was taking it home the other day from San Francisco. Somebody lit up a cigarette and he tried to, get him to put it out. And, there's just all kinds of shenanigans that are happening. And it is the most expensive transportation system, I think, in the United States, perhaps if not the world. And so I would like to know why we should pay more and pay a higher tax for a service that is subpar.
Okay, well, thank you. And I want to say, fortunately, BART, I don't get to oversee BART. We do have a separately elected BART board that does that. And the state legislature, I know Scott Wiener also was looking at a bridge toll that I think is now that measure is going to be that legislations be deferred for at least another year, because there was such vehement opposition by many of us who would see the bridge toll impacting our our Contra Costa commuting residents, BART is challenged. And I will say, I like you, Carrie, have had extreme reservations about riding BART. I did, though, about a month ago, was headed up to Washington to visit my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren. And my husband said, on a Saturday afternoon, let's take BART to the airport. It was an amazingly positive experience. They have increased significantly police presence, ambassador presence on BART. I was in one of the new trains that shows you electronically stations you're getting to. There was not an incident going there or coming back that the following Monday afternoon. So I would say to people, give BART another chance. There's very clear signs. If you see anything like your son saw someone lighting up, they can text BART, and it's amazing how quickly one of those ambassadors, which are oftentimes people who have a social worker training, who wear a uniform, though, which gives them a little bit more authority with individuals, has been able to address those situations. They are starting to roll out the fare gates, which also is presenting people who aren't fare paying passengers from riding the train. But the fare model for BART has really been, I think pre-pandemic, well over close to at least 70% of their budget was fare dependent. Most bus agencies were far less dependent on the fares. We're getting grants, we're getting funding from the feds, from the state, that fund our transportation services. So they're in a real challenging situation. They're working really, really hard to get more riders to start using it again for commuting, because we are seeing the traffic impact. They have shortened the headways when a BART train comes now on our line, meaning the line that comes all the way out from essentially from Antioch and coming through, Concord and Walnut Creek and Lafayette and Orinda, to being at least a train every 15 minutes. So I think I would say give it another chance. I don't want to see us as taxpayers subsidizing it forever, but it's a really important part of our transportation system. And without it, we would be in real trouble, as we saw in the past when there was strikes or other things shutting down BART. Our freeways just became parking lots. We got a lot better being able to work remotely, but it's a real challenge. And I would encourage you to reach out to your BART representatives. They care about what's going on, and they're trying to make it a reasonable system. But I've been really pleased with the new train cars and the enhanced security and, more importantly, social services that are taking place there, because we did have an issue with Confire where we had people getting on BART, riding it all the way to then the end of the line, Pittsburgh, and then calling for an ambulance and wanting to be taken to an Oakland hospital. Now, they really weren't having a medical emergency, but with the 911 system, you need to transport someone. And this was sort of their free ride back to Oakland when BART shut down. And so working with BART, we got more social workers on there, sort of dealt with that whole situation. But it's a concern. We want them to be successful, but safety has got to be paramount.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. And Carrie, just FYI, I know that Lafayette Chamber, we did send several letters opposing that particular measure with Scott Wiener with the raised bridge tolls to fund BART. And obviously in our current, just also Steve Glazer, Rebecca Barrett-Cahan also opposed it, and he did pull it down. So I think you are not, I would only take solace in you are not unique, I think, in your feeling that BART needs to get their act together. The chamber board also had a presentation from Deborah Allen, who is our local BART representative, and she was very sympathetic. She's a bit of a minority on the board, apparently, thinking like this, but I think I think the message is getting through slowly. So I'm hoping we have good things, as a supervisor said. I think everybody's realizing that there's issues that need to be addressed before ridership gets anything close to normal. I have another question here I see from Paul. I know you put a comment in about the development, but Paul, do you have another question for the supervisor?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you to the chamber for putting this opportunity together to be able to connect with Supervisor Andersen, and Supervisor Andersen, thank you so much for making the time. I just put a comment that I know John had kind of brought it up and you addressed a bit. I just wanted to sort of just reemphasize that whole issue. I mean, I understand that sometimes things take longer because it's just a process in itself, but the fact that you submit an application and it takes almost month and a half for that application to be considered accepted, to be assigned to a queue, and then from that point onward, it takes another 3 months for that queue to process it so that the applicant at least get a comment back, and it takes close to 4 months. I don't think that should be considered efficient by any means. And I mean, to basically compliment the county, at least they're looking at months. City of Lafayette takes a year. I mean, I've been working with City of Lafayette since 2021 to get this project approved, and it took 2.5 years to finally get that approved. So City of Lafayette has the most archaic planning system, but that's neither here nor there. But I was hoping the county would be a lot more efficient, and the fact that it's going to take me 4 months to just get someone to look at my application and give me some comments back, I just find that very concerning. So just wanted to bring that up to your attention.
And I appreciate that, Paul, and it's I find it very concerning too. I don't see that as efficient, and again, staffing issues, but I've screenshot your comment, and it's something I'm going to be talking to John Kopchik about, I realize that we're still sort of this post-pandemic hiring, but I really want to understand what our goal is going to be long-term to turn things around, because having been on a town council in Danville for 10 years, ours was within 30 days. We were going to have, if not approved, you could go up to the counter essentially and get a basic sort of plan check. Hey, this is looking okay. So not that it was approved, but it is a challenge. But nevertheless, your point is very well taken, and it's something that I want to see us improve. And I think that's the case, particularly because the county, if you're building in unincorporated areas, we don't have design review unless you're on an unusual small lot where you do have to have some. It shouldn't take that long, and it's frustrating because time is money, not to be trite, but it is. And I understand that. And I'd love to see us find a way to expedite things, because it is frustrating to me as an elected official to see inefficiencies. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Paul. we're going to have time for a couple more questions, I think, before our time is up. I do want to call out a couple things in the chat. Holly did put a link in for the supervisor's weekly newsletter. I can definitely endorse that. I get that, and it's really phenomenally. It definitely complements what we get from Lafayette as far as understanding what's going on that impacts us throughout the region. So definitely it's worth signing up for that. Also, we were talking about homeless quite a bit, which is a worthwhile thing. And I do know we have Pamela McGrath on the call. She was with Trinity Center, which is an amazing organization. She put a little blurb in here. But Pamela, not to put you on the spot, but do you have just give everybody a little update what's going on with Trinity, because I think it really complements what the supervisor was talking about.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Supervisor Andersen, for the thorough and very sensitive information about, the homeless issues that we're all trying to deal with in one way or another. Trinity Center sees up to 80 people a day who walk in for services that range from coming in needing a meal, to needing a shower, to needing to do their laundry, to needing to meet with a case manager. We are a staff of 12 people who do our very, very, very best to meet the needs of as many people as we can on a daily basis. We are open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for people needing services. We are always looking for ways to offer more services and more impactful services. Our winter shelter operates from December through April. We do have 50 beds, and we will open this December with a post-COVID kind of process. During COVID, we were only able to serve 17 people because we had to keep them physically distanced. So this year we're offering more beds, more services. We're adding more day services by way of workshops. We are offering a wellness workshop. We want people to understand how to advocate for their own holistic wellness. And so we consider wellness to be everything from physical, mental, spiritual, financial. So that workshop is being planned now, and we'll implement that very soon. We have a new workforce development workshop. Workshops on a weekly basis. So we are getting people ready to rejoin the workforce, and we're plugging them into jobs and supporting them through those jobs. And we also, as you mentioned, do offer housing supportive services. When people become housed, we want them to understand how to stay housed and find all the services that they need to do that. So thank you.
And I am such a big fan of Trinity Center. I appreciate how much you do. And the county, we can't address homeless services alone. And so we do rely heavily on our community-based organization partners, because we can then leverage some of the dollars we get to have them out in the field providing the supportive services in a culturally sensitive way to that community, and ensuring that we provide people with some stabilization so they're not cycling back into a shelter.
Yes, and thank you for reminding everyone that our members, our clients, are our neighbors. They are homegrown here.
Thank you.
Exactly. Very good. Well, do we have any other questions for the supervisor? We are almost out of time, but Marian Dury, would love to hear from you.
You're going to give me a hard question, aren't you?
This won't be a question. I just want to thank Supervisor Andersen for all she does for our community. We really appreciate it. And I want to point out that we have a council meeting coming up on Monday. We haven't had one for 5 weeks. Both PG&E and Confire will be coming to the council meeting to talk about mitigation, prevention of wildfire. Also, there'll be a separate presentation from PG&E about the power outages. So encourage people to come listen to that. And then this is the biggest public service announcement. The housing element will be back on the agenda on Monday. I can't go into all the details. All I can say is go to the city website, read the 11-page staff report. As you will see, there are no good options for the council. So,
and I was just going to say, we just got our letter last week from the state. We thought we had wrapped ours up as well, and they still have some very vague suggestions that they want us to comply with. And it's a very challenging for any city trying to get their housing element approved, which again is our regional housing needs allocation, identifying sites where we can provide more affordable housing, so, and build of all levels.
That's exactly what we'll be discussing on Monday, the RENA allocation.
Gosh, thank you, Mayor. All right, David, I think you're going to wrap us up. David Clark, do you have one final question for the supervisor?
Dave, thanks very much. I was just going to ask the county's RENA, so that worked out really well. I was scratching around here trying to lower my hand, but thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Yes, unfortunately, it sounds like a similar status, but anyway, yeah, it's clearly is a amazingly time-consuming effort to get this thing done with the state. So I think that is about it. So Supervisor Andersen, I'd like to thank you. Are there any final words you'd like to leave us with?
No, it's my pleasure to represent Lafayette. You're an amazing community. Every time I come to one of your events, just the way this community pulls together to support the businesses, to support one another is really inspiring. And I thank you for all of the service each of you do. As I look around the screen, I know each of you are very involved in different areas within the community to make it the place it is. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Oh, thank you so much. It's been an honor having you, and I can tell you, you're definitely welcome back anytime. And to send us out on our day, I'm like turn over to Holly to give us an update on a certain little activity that the chamber is hosting along with the city shortly, among other things.
Yes, just a final word, and the event of the community is coming up in less than a month. So the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival is actually a week later this year, a little different than our third weekend in September. It's actually the 4th due to a Jewish holiday. So it's September 23rd and 24th. So I'd love for you guys to be our advocates and help get the word out to your neighbors, your customers, your fellow community. But if they happen to show up the week earlier, the downtown businesses would love to see them then too. Just have them come back the next weekend. So right on the heels of the Art and Wine Festival, we'll also have the Lafayette Res Run for Education. And this brings over 2,000 people to our downtown. 10Kers get to run around the reservoir, and people get to enjoy a healthy lifestyles fair for just a few hours on Sunday morning, October 22nd. So those two events, add them to your calendar. Art and Wine Festival is September 23rd and 24th. The Res Run is October 22nd. And then, of course, we'll be heading into all the holiday stuff with Trick or Treat Street, Thanksgiving breakfast, It's a Wonderful Life. And before you know it, we've wrapped up 2023. But thank you all for your time this morning. Thank you, John, for moderating. Thank you, Supervisor Andersen, for your ongoing support. And we'll hope to see you at the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival.